talk about the next wave of nutracosmetics. It was a great panel before talking about the evidence and the change in the science, and I'm going to elaborate some more on that and the science of nutracosmetics and how we're moving away from the sort of the skin appearance-based type of claims to a more skin biology type of claim. So we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to particularly focus on carotenoids as well. So the category we know is growing. It's approximately worth about $8 billion currently, and that's expected to double in the next decade to increase to about $18 billion by 2034. So we know there's a lot of scope for this industry and using more in the nutracosmetic industry because the growth is there and the interest is there. Currently, we're at this defining moment where as I said, we're moving away from appearance and we're really focusing more on the science and the claims that go around that science. Rather than sort of the visible signs of aging, we're talking about the healthy skin, and we're talking about how the barrier functions, and we're talking about how antioxidants work and all of those things. So it's exciting because as we started with this claim-driven adoption. And what I mean by claim-driven is, what could we claim about it? We could claim that it changes your visible signs of aging. We could claim glow. We can claim all of those very much what we call cosmetic claims or cosmetic benefits. But now, excitingly, we're moving to the science and where we are in the science, and that the evidence that we have for those claims. And we're just going to remember that we talked about inside, outside beauty. All the beauty comes from the inside, really. If your barrier is not working or all of those things aren't happening, we have to think about the inside, and we have to think about how that inside affects our outside, and more about the science of the skin biology. And we talked a lot about skin biology, the microbiome. All of those things are sort of, instead of thinking we have a healthy glow, we're having a healthy skin. And healthy skin leads to longevity. All of those things work around the science. So the science will separate the leaders from the followers, and the biomarkers are replacing marketing language. Phase 3 of this change is the standardisation and the regulatory. And I know we heard a little bit about the regulatory before. Every country is different for regulatory. I'm not going to speak about the regulations, but obviously that regulation will catch up. The framework of the regulatory will catch up to the claims, and that's what we'll probably see moving forward. So the shift from beauty to biology. So we like to think about it. We used to focus on aesthetics, outcomes, visible changes. Now, all of those things are still very, very important. People want to look and see themselves looking better. So they're not necessarily going to not want aesthetic claims. We do. But we did work very much on the product benefits and the visual, what we could see. And that framing is the sort of the old framing. Now, we're going to add to that, we're going to add skin health as well, because that skin health is the foundation of our aesthetic claims. So the focus moves now from how do we get that glow? There must be some biology behind how do we get that glow. So that's what smart consumers are now looking for. What is the mechanism? How does skin biology get affected? What about barrier function? What about antioxidant levels? What about inflammation in the skin? So we're looking at those measurable biomarkers as well as the aesthetics. So that those two things together, by framing the biology around the aesthetics, those two things coming together is really where we're moving to as an industry. And pretty well I said, we're anchoring skin biology rather than the cosmetic claims. Now, before we look at anything, you guys got some nice little things passed around here today. And so if we have a look in there, which I'd prefer not to do, we can see that, this is not what we like to see in the mirror. We want to see us nice glowing. We don't want to see those wrinkles. We don't want to see any of those things. We want to look good. But how we look good and feel good comes from our biology. So I'm going to go for a little bit through a little bit of skin biology to get us all into the mood of what we're going to look at. So first of all, the skin, our biggest protective barrier that we have, very important. It's not just what we look like, it is the biggest protective mechanism we have for our whole body. It comes and it has a number of layers. The outside layer is the epidermis, the thing that we see, the thing that gets wrinkly and old as we get older. It's got keratinocytes, melanocytes, Langerhans cells. It's its primary frontline defence against oxidative stress and environmental damage. And that's what, that's what it does to you, that oxidative stress and damage. Second, underneath that is the dermis, and the dermis is where we're producing collagen, hyaluronic acid. It's responsible for that firmness, elasticity, and it's the primary target for our carotenoids and where the carotenoids protection works under the skin. Under that is the hypodermis, which anchors our skin to the muscles and provides a protective fat layer, thermal insulation. They're all very important for keeping that our skin healthy and intact. So we want to keep all of those three layers. We see the damage occurring in the epidermis, and it's what everybody sees, but we have to actually work on that dermal layer to get the benefits of the skin biology that we are looking for. So how does this oxidative stress affect our aging skin? Well, the reactive oxygen species. Good old, they're the bane of our problem with skin ageing. Obviously, that the oxidation, they increase the MMPs, which then collagen and elastin degrade, which degrading of your collagen and elastin leads to loss of firmness and loss of your general skin architecture. The sagginess, the wrinkles, all of those things come from that reduction in the firmness and elasticity. Second thing we have is wrinkles. Yeah, it's all getting worse, isn't it? It doesn't sound great. Next thing we have is wrinkles and skin age, the collagen breakdown. When the collagen breaks down, or the collagen reduces its synthesis, and that happens naturally as we age through menopause, where you have a lot of weight loss, all of those things can happen. That reduced collagen synthesis leads to fine lines and wrinkles and visible skin laxity. That dullness, that sagging. Then we have the barrier dysfunction. So the peroxidation again, that sort of oxidation effect breaks down the stratum corneum lipids. The lipids give that plumpness and firmness to the skin. That increases your transepidermal water loss. And I'm going to go into detail about transepidermal water loss, but really that means that your skin is dry and losing water. And when your skin is dry, it's prone to sensitivity and has a compromised barrier. We're going to talk a lot about compromised skin barriers today. The other thing that you can have with your reactive oxygen species is your an upregulated tyrosinase, I can't speak, is increased melanogenesis, which is dark spots, pigmentation. Uneven tone, bad skin tone, pigmentation, etc. Next we have inflammaging, which is a very hot topic in every area, whether that be skin or just general nutraceuticals and aging. So inflammation, activation of things like NF-kappa B, TNF alpha release, chronic low-grade inflammation, increased aging. Now that happens in all your body, not just the skin. So that's systemic wide. And again, when you have these reactive oxygen species and all those things happen and oxidation, you get DNA damage, the keratinocytes and the fibroblasts, decreased cell turnover. Decreased cell turnover gives us dull and fatigued, dry, flaky, unlustrous skin. So they're all the things that how oxidative stress ages skin. As I said, you get lack of glow. So reduced antioxidant capacity, in turn, causes you to have uneven texture, dullness, and lack of glow. And we all want glow. That's what we're looking for in the skin. We heard them talking about it last session. Everybody wants to see that glow, but we have to work on the inside to get that glow on the outside. Carotenoids. Let me talk a little bit about carotenoids and what they do and why they're the best allies that we have for the skin. So they're lipid-soluble pigments found in plants, algae, bacteria. There's about 600 of them known that we know of. I'm only going to talk about a few of them, particularly beta-carotene, lycopene, lutein, zeaxanthin. And their polyene chain enables efficient radical scavenging. That's their job. They're free radical scavengers. They get rid of the reactive oxygen species, all those things that are leading to aging and skin. These are the ones that you need in your body to start fighting against those. I'm ahead of myself on my slides. So they're free antioxidant with the free radical scavenging. Then they're anti-inflammatory, so they, as I said, inhibit NF-kappa B, which took an IL-6, those things that cause inflammaging and inflammatory cytokines. They have a photoprotection response, which is to help absorb the UV radiation. They reduce redness, and they protect against DNA damage in our skin and everywhere else. And finally, they're important for cellular regulation, influencing gene expression for cell growth and cell repair. So they have all of these 4 actions that work together to promote that skin benefit. I said I was going to get to transepidermal water loss. What is transepidermal water loss, or TEWL, as we all like to say for short? So it's the passive diffusion of water from our dermis through the epidermis into the atmosphere. And it's a direct measure of skin barrier function. So what we look at when we're looking at the transepidermal water loss, the more we lose, the worse that is for our skin. Because if you imagine that skin is just losing water, and your skin, just like the rest of your body, needs to be hydrated. Hydration is very important. I think there's a lot of people with hydration bars and things in the show at the moment. Hydration is important for every part of your body, but primarily for skin. And you could be as hydrated as possible, but if you've got bad skin barrier integrity, that water's just going to be lost. So it's very important to maintain that barrier. We talk about barriers in a lot of parts of our body. And we talk about gut barriers, we've got skin barriers, all of those things together are protecting us from losing the water here. So a compromised barrier elevates transepidermal water loss, causes dryness, vulnerability for the skin. And so the stratum corneum we talked about before, which is that lipid matrix of cholesterols, fatty acids, and the primary barrier against our water loss. So the stratum corneum is, when we talk about skin barrier, that's the skin barrier function that we're talking about. It's like the bricks and mortar that keep your skin intact. And it's, the stronger that is, the less water we lose and the more hydrated our skin is. So carotenoids and skin hydration. By reducing TEWL, those carotenoids enhance the hydration, preventing water loss, evaporation from deeper skin, and it's the most primary and direct link of how carotenoids work with the skin barrier. You have natural moisturising factors, which are hygroscopic molecules that attract and hold water for hydration, and that's supported by, again, I'm going to say this again, the healthy barrier environment. I'm going to say that a lot. So you've got hydration by the barrier. The barrier also has natural moisturising factors. And the other thing very important in the skin and very important for hydration is hyaluronic acid. So hyaluronic acid can hold up to about 1,000 times its weight in water. And carotenoids protect your hyaluronic acid from oxidative degeneration, and it increases its water binding capacity in the dermis. So you've got the 3 ways that the carotenoids affect that skin hydration: supporting the barrier and reducing TEWL, the natural moisturising factors, and finally supporting that hyaluronic acid to hold in that moisture. Okay, collagen thickness. Now we talk about collagen all the time. Collagen, it's the most abundant of the proteins in the dermis. It provides strength, especially with aging, and when we age, we produce less collagen. Same, particularly during menopause for women. I'm very interested in that. But also during, as I said, lots of weight loss or muscle breakdown, those sorts of things. And when you don't have that collagen, the dermis isn't structurally sound. So again, you get that sagging. The role of carotenoids in the collagen thickness is to downregulate the matrix metalloproteinases, or the MMPs, which enzymes that degrade collagen in response particularly to UV and oxidative stress. So sun is our enemy for these things as well. UV, that oxidative stress will cause the breakdown of that matrix. Carotenoids also help by fibroblast support. They reduce the oxidative burden, increase the collagen synthesis capacity over time. So I suppose the key to the carotenoids is their function is to the reactive oxygen and reducing that, and you know, they're scavengers of oxidation. The other thing they do is increase that collagen synthesis. So the two things. So we want to think the carotenoids are really important for the synthesis of collagen. And you could take collagen, but if you can't synthesize it and maintain it and not break it down, then you need to have both of those things happening. And the last thing, of course, is they reduce inflammation. And this inflammaging that we talk about, the collagen maintenance, inflammation will break down collagen as well. So I'm going to get to talking about Carrarite, which is the formula that we did this research on, which I'm going to move to in a minute. 200 milligrams a day. It's a complex of a number of carotenoids together that work synergistically, and alpha-carotene, beta-carotene for its antioxidant protection. They're all antioxidant. Lycopene we know is a very much a scavenger and for the reactive oxygen species. You've also got lutein, which is a macular pigment, good for photoprotection of the skin barrier, and zeaxanthin as well. So those things all work together, and they're part of the total Carrarite synergistic complex. Benefit areas, and we've talked about these a little bit, are the skin health and photoprotection, oxidative stress management in general. There's been some other studies, just not necessarily on skin. I'm going to talk about the skin study today, but there's been other studies on emotional well-being and balance, vitality, overall well-being, visual health, macular pigment density, ocular hydration. So not only are we hydrating, helping to hydrate the skin, ocular hydration as well, it's all linked, and also cognitive function like visual memory, learning, attention and processing speed. So let me talk a little bit about the study that we did. So I'm at RDC Clinical. We're in Brisbane, so we did this in a population in Brisbane. It was a randomised, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. I'm going to skip a little bit through this because we have talked some of these things before. Because David was going to do the first half, I was going to do the second half. But I kind of talked about the first half. So there's a number of things, and we talked about the ROS species. We want to reduce that inflammaging, and we want to reduce that oxidation. But there's a number of things that cause this oxidation in our skin, or the reactive oxygen species in our skin. And there's two things: intrinsic aging, which is inside, and then the external factors. So the intrinsic aging are things like mitochondrial breakdown, which happens with age, impaired cell renewal, lack of collagen. Then you have photoaging, which is skin from the sun. And then you have downstream damage from other parts of your body that you actually have inflammation in. So I just think it doesn't just go from, they're not separate systems. So if you've got inflammation in the rest of your body, you're potentially going to have inflammation in your skin as well. The other big thing that is very important for skin, particularly in women, is estrogen decline. And estrogen decline happens during, as we know, menopause, perimenopause. That triggers significant skin changing. And I don't know if I know I talk to a lot of people who are in menopause, and it's like suddenly my skin was great and now it's sagging, and now I've got more wrinkles, and now it feels drier, and now I see some nods. I feel the same way. I'm like, oh yeah, it's not quite like it used to be, and that, unfortunately, estrogen, sadly, estrogen leads to collagen loss. About 30% within the first 5 years of menopause, barrier weakening. We don't produce as much sebum, so the sebum in the skin is also hydrating. Now, you probably remember when you're younger, your sebum you have in the T-zone, which is bad, causes acne, those sorts of things. Sebum in the rest of your body, like your cheeks, rest of your and they're where you want that to be, especially as you get older. So, although we're trying to reduce sebum a lot of the time in young people with acne, as you get older in menopause, you want to increase that, because that is actually going to, with the water, keep your skin firm. But, of course, that reduces as you get through menopause as well. And so that loss of estrogen, and estrogen is also anti-inflammatory. And when we lose the estrogen, we have more inflammation effects as well. So our trial, 12 weeks, randomised, double-blind, as I said, placebo-controlled. We ran that last year between July and December. The intervention was Carotite, 28 to 30 milligrams of mixed carotenoids, sunflower oil, and it was once daily with food. They generally took it in the morning. Placebo was identical with just the sunflower. There were 80 participants in the study, aged between 40 and 55, that perfect premenopausal, perimenopausal group. Generally, within normal healthy range, non-smokers, we washed them out of any carotenoids they had, no cosmetic procedures in the last 3 months. Our primary outcome was the visible signs of ageing, so we do care about what they look like, what your skin looks like, but we also care about the biology that goes with it. Things like elasticity, hydration, sebum content, those sorts of things, pore sizes. Our secondary outcomes were the biological markers, so that transepidermal water loss, collagen thickness, and skin carotenoid levels. We actually measured the amount of carotenoids that got to the skin. Full ethics registration, etc., etc. So we screened 148, excluded 68 who weren't eligible, ended up with 80, and 78 finished, which is excellent for a 3-month study, which means that it was easy to take. You didn't have any issues with compliance. We didn't have any issues with the fact that they didn't like taking the capsule. And the only 2 that got excluded were really because they did something like had a cosmetic procedure in the middle of it that they needed to be excluded later. So no one was really excluded for any other reasons. Age was average 47, 48. Weight's very close, BMI was very close, compliance was excellent. And everybody says, why did they get 102% compliance? Because there's always extra capsules, and sometimes people just take an extra one. But basically their compliance was good. It's an average, 98 to 100%, which means they took their capsules every day, which is great. So when we talk about the visible signs of ageing, notably we saw a sebum regulation. So we saw actually an increase of sebum in the U zone, which is important, and a slight reduction in the T zone, which I said there's the zones that we want them to reduce in, and we also got an increased effect in the U zone, which means they had that greater hydration. We had positive improvements in elasticity, but that was at both groups and they weren't significant. Skin moisture also was comparable in both groups. Wrinkle scores, we saw some minimal changes. It was trending, you could see some of the trending towards it going for the active group, but this study was 3 months, and obviously we're working from the inside out, and you've got to expect some time for these things to change. If it was a topical, you would see something happen a lot faster, but as an oral, 3 months is probably the minimum that you would expect. So we started seeing these visible changes And pigmentation, we didn't see any changes, but nobody really had pigmentation. So the exciting is the transepidermal water loss. Had a 32% reduction in transepidermal water loss, which is a significant reduction, significant from baseline and significant from the placebo. And there's the graph. We can see the placebo stayed about the same in the green, Carrarite reduced. What this means is all the things I've been talking about before. We want to reduce that tulle. We need to make sure that we can keep a stronger barrier, have less water escaping, and improve that skin barrier function, in turn improving hydration, in turn improving skin health. Then we looked at skin collagen thickness, and we do this with an ultrasound. So it's an ultrasound. I get a little picture there. That's an actual trial participant's ultrasound. The darker means less thickness. The brighter colours are better, and we can see that change in those 12 weeks across collagen thickness. And we had an increase from baseline of 11.9%, which is significant statistically, but also significant in a clinical point as well. So we can actually visibly see that collagen thickness increasing. It builds collagen, some of the things we talked about before in the science lesson, by MMP inhibition, fibroblast protection, inflammatory balance by reducing that inflammation. So this is really good evidence for that support that we can neutralise the ROS in the dermis, which then leads to better collagen production, better collagen synthesis, and reduced collagen loss, which are the three things that we want to happen. The other really interesting thing that we measured is we measured skin carotenoids, not just carotenoids in the blood circulating. It actually measured them in the skin, so in the fingers actually. And it shows very good bioavailability of the product. We saw a significant increase in carotenoid levels by week 6 and again at week 12. So we know that it is very highly bioavailable, the Carrarite. So we saw a typical oral carotenoid is 5 to 30%, but we got about a 48% increase in carotenoid levels in the skin. So we know it's going to where it has to go. There were no serious adverse events, as we would not expect. 0 withdrawals due to adverse events. 98.5% compliance rate in the active group. And very, very minor adverse events, and they weren't necessarily product related. So the safety profile is excellent. Just a little review of all of that, since I think I'm running out of time. They consumed the Carrarite every day, 12 weeks, 28 to 30 milligrams of the natural mixed carotenoids. That led to a significant increase in carotenoid levels, as we saw from the measurement in the skin, in the Vegimeter. I know it's a funny name for a machine, but that led to neutralisation of the reaction of oxygen species. That reduction led to a better preserved stratum corneum and preserved lipids. In turn, we saw that in the effect of the transepidermal water loss, which was reduced. That then led to the dermal support, where we had that anti-inflammatory, and we had the ability for that collagen synthesis to increase, and then we saw that in the collagen thickness. So all of those things together lead to a very strong biology of the skin, and also a very strong dermal layer in this sort of group of perimenopausal people. So I think I'm very close to the end, but thank you very much for being here today, and I'm sure we don't think we have time for questions. We might, but see how we go. Thank you.